Boutillat from
Boutillat.
Boutillat.
Almost.
And I had a whole hour of French this morning. I still got it wrong.
That's all right.
Introductions in just a second. Wine Talks, of course, available on iHeartRadio, Pandora, wherever you hang out for podcasting. Got a great show coming up that's being released recently, coming soon, with Charles Billet about how he took a pink Cadillac on the road to tell Americans about rosé. It's a great story. Have a listen when it comes out today. Otherwise, we're here to have a conversation with Monsieur Boutillat.
Boutillat.
I don't know why I have it spelled wrong here. He is the winemaker, the lead winemaker at Piper-Heidsieck, one of the great champagne houses. We have a lot to talk about, but welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure so far having conversations about what's going on in the Champagne district of France. But I want to lay the land just a little bit, just to understand for the listeners some. We got to turn off that air conditioner. This is
That's live, so we cannot lie.
It's live. That's what happens when we're live. It's already off, Connor. Let's talk about Champagne as a district and understand for the consumers that Champagne is a piece of ground.
Yes,
not necessarily a wine.
Yes, I mean it's both. In fact, Champagne wine are only from Champagne, France. That's something important. And why is that? Because I mean, Champagne is a sparkling wine, but you can only make Champagne on the ground, on the terroir of Champagne, because we have a unique terroir. And terroir is what? Soil and climate. So the chalkiness of our terroir is quite unique in the world, and that chalk underground give all the minerality, the elegance, and the freshness of all wine coming from Champagne. And then you have the climate, and we have a nice double influence kind of climate with, on one hand, the oceanic influence, which bring the fresh air kind of, but also the continental influence that give us quite warm summer. So we have a good combination of both with warm days, but also cool nights. So we can have great ripeness.
We have a lot to talk about. You just said a mouthful, and I think we're going to peel it back a little closer. For one, didn't I read that besides his other egregious events, that Putin had outlawed the term champagne on anything French coming into Russia, and only Russian sparkling wine could be called champagne? Didn't it just happen?
Yeah, that happened a few months ago.
Yeah, I mean, what happened? First of all, did you guys even respond to it? Did the group of champagne makers in France say, "Well, this is just stupid"? Everybody knows better.
We have like the Comité Champagne, who is paying attention of what's going on in the world regarding the name of champagne. So they look at that very carefully for Russia, but also for here in the US, in California, or everywhere else in the world. So they take care of that. They are the ones who respond for all of us, kind of, the growers and the houses of champagne, to take care of that. But we know that we have plenty of lovers of champagne everywhere in the world. I want them to have great champagne on that table.
It's just amazing that, well, we're just going to call it something else. And you can't call it champagne if you want to bring it here. Because if I remember, here's a bottle right here. I was just going to show you this. This is a bottle of sparkling wine from my father's store in 1975, 78. And it's Chateau Malaga, which is his brand. And they called it California Champagne back then before it was an issue. And then they removed it when the things came to a head. So now we have I'm going to call him a dictator saying, no, can't call it that, only if it's made here. And wasn't Russia one of the main, at some point, even in the 1800s, one of the main marketplaces for champagne at that time?
Yeah, probably. I mean, Russia also here. I mean, back in the days, the appellation, the name wasn't protected.
Right.
And pretty much you were able to make a sparkling wine and say it's a champagne. But in fact, and thanks to Comité Champagne, we were able to protect that because, again, it's really linked with the terroir. And we want to guarantee the quality of every champagne on earth. And for that, we need to kind of fight for this kind of issue. And I mean, there is great sparkling wine everywhere in the world. Here in California, in Italy, of course, in South Africa, in New Zealand, everywhere. But that's sparkling wine because they are coming from different land, different terroir. And I think it's more important to highlight the terroir of California rather than writing champagne when it's not champagne. So.
It's interesting that when you say terroir, because it's obviously the most important concept in the world of wine, and part of what this show is about is to teach consumers and listeners and viewers that your job is to bring to the table a sense of place, a sense of Champagne, a sense of the district that they're coming from, a sense of a vintage in this case of 2014, so that we can learn every year what's happening. Now, terroir, I want to add to that definition and see if I'm wrong. You spent time at Chateau Margaux,
Yes, I
and
did.
that's making Bordeaux.
Yes, Margot.
You spent time in South Africa
Yes.
making.
I was in Franschhoek district, so I made
Yeah,
some Method Cab Classic, which is a sparkling wine,
right.
and also from other like varietal wine in Franschhoek district.
And Margaux, you were making Margaux.
Margot, red and white.
Red and
Yes.
white.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know they had a white.
Yeah, Pavillon Blanc is the name of
Pavillon
of
Blanc.
yeah, from Sauvignon Blanc and touch of Semillon.
All right, so where else? Chile, it says.
Yes, well, I mean,
Tochagua.
I grew up in Champagne, so I started my career kind of at 0 years old, 1 year
Yeah.
old with my father. I grew up with him, like going in the vineyard with him, doing the pruning, the harvest by hand with him, the riddling also by hand in the winery with him. But then I wanted to discover something else. I wanted to learn from outside of Champagne, so that's why I went to Chateau Margaux indeed, but also in Châteauneuf-du-Pape in Rhône Valley. That was for France. And I also worked, as you say, in South Africa, but also Chile, here in California at Peter Michael Winery. So a bit.
Peter Michael.
Yeah, Peter
Wow.
Michael. Yeah, nice place too.
Yeah.
And I've been to Chile. So yeah, I wanted to learn from different winemakers, different point of view, different winemaking approach, meet also with different climates, and I learned a lot about winemaking, but also viticulture and vineyard management. So it was a lot of fun, a lot of information, and then at some point it was, I think, time for me to go back home and bring back to Champagne everything I learned from anybody in the world, and try to bring my own approach and own print in Champagne.
So here in the beginning of that conversation was, I think terroir has a lot to do with your experience or anybody's experience as making wine. In other words, yes, it's the soil, it's the climate, it's the expression of the wine comes from all that. But doesn't that include all this experience that you created for yourself to understand this?
That's funny because I had the same conversation a few days ago about terroir. What is terroir? And for me, terroir is really linked with the soil and the climate.
Just there, okay.
But then, indeed, you need men and women to turn the terroir that give the grapes into wine. So, like the harvest date, for example, the date that you decide to pick the grapes will make a difference on the wine. And then the winemaking approach you have will also make a difference. So you have, according to the men and women, the winemakers that are turning the grapes into wine and so the terroir into wines, you might have different expressions of the same terroir regarding the winemaking approach you choose. So that's that's the good combination. I mean, great wine for me is a good combination of great terroir and great winemaking.
That's kind of tricky. Because I asked you when you first walked in, how do you, as you come in, this is your fourth vintage, right? No, fifth
yeah,
vintage?
I joined Piper-Heidsieck in 2018.
Okay, so 2018, and we're going to talk about the accolades you've already earned. But if you step into somebody's shoes, you're stepping into a style, an expression. If I buy Piper-Heidsieck year after year, particularly the non-vintage, I'm going to have some expectation that the character's similar. But at the same time, you have to express the terroir that's changing.
Yeah.
Isn't that what your job is basically? But not manipulate, but to
adapt. Yes. I mean, Piper-Heidsieck was established in 1785, so we have a long history.
Oh, really?
And indeed, when you join such a great house like Piper-Heidsieck, you carry a lot of tradition, house style that needs to remain for the coming years.
Right.
So for that, I needed to taste a lot with my predecessor, with Regis Camus, and also with the winemaking team of Piper, to really understand the style of Piper-Heidsieck through the years, to get soak in it, kind of understand it, to be able to replicate it. But indeed, as you said, the climate is changing. The ripeness we have today is not the one we had 20, 30 years ago. The global warming is there, and we get grapes that are riper than before. So you get more fruitiness, more body into it, but less freshness, less acidity. So in order to keep the style consistent, I need to change the way
Mm-hmm.
I'm making
Mm-hmm.
wine in
Mm-hmm.
order to keep that style consistent. So we need to adapt because the terroir and the climate is kind of changing slowly but surely, and we want to keep the elegance and the freshness of our champagne. And for that, we need to change the way we make viticulture. We
Mm-hmm.
move to
Mm-hmm.
sustainable viticulture, and also the way we make wine. The winemaking approach might change a little bit. Just an example like that: malolactic fermentation. We used to make 100% of malolactic fermentation for our wine, and today we choose to block the malolactic fermentation in some cases to keep the malic acid and so
Mm-hmm.
keep the freshness, the
Mm-hmm.
acidity, which is
That's it.
very important in champagne.
One woman put it to me, and I've said this before on the show, and I think it's a fabulous expression of what your job is, and that is, I take this bottle of wine halfway around the world, I put it on the table, and I say, "This is who and when we were. This is who we are."
Mm.
And there's not that many products you can do that with. And it also intrigues me, and I've had this conversation before too, and I want to get into the 1785 in a second, but the idea that the regions of France are protected, that you have this cooperative or this commission that handles the rules and handles make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, is an old world concept. Bordeaux is protected in what you can grow. Champagne is protected in what you can grow. Burgundy, well, the south of France is different, but the Côte d'Rhône, butter, right? Cheese,
Everything.
right? And it's a fabulous concept that the culture and the character and the regional differences are protected that way. We don't have that in America. We're a new world. We don't get to do that. We're kind of getting back to that in the food world. So how does that play out in your responsibility? How do you feel like your responsibility toward the champagne in general?
But that's very interesting because I think that limits are important. But then, because in order to keep the quality of all champagne great, we need to have that limit. So you can today only use Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Meunier, or some other grapes. You have like a pruning system you need to carry, a number of vines per hectare that you need to carry, because we know that's important for quality. But then inside that limit, you need to find some liberty, freedom. And especially because I traveled and I worked here in California, in New Zealand, South Africa, and Chile as well. And so I saw that full freedom, which is very, very interesting and push your creativity a lot. So what is interesting for me today at Piper is to combine the tradition, the history, the appellation regulation, but inside that, find the liberty to create and try things and change things. And also, like we were talking about the Comité Champagne, it's not because the regulation is there that we don't look for the future. There is some experimentation that are made in order to find new varietals of grapes for the future that will be able to face the different climates, to be resistant for disease, for example. So there is a lot of research and development in order to adapt slowly but surely the regulation for the next year and the coming decades as well. So it's a long-term way of thinking as well.
I think it's extraordinarily important. And I say that for a couple of reasons. One is, like rosé, it seems to me, in this office where I taste wine every Tuesday, is sort of an expression of what's going on in the marketplace. I'm seeing many more expressions of sparkling wine from all different parts of the world that didn't create it before. So the idea, the winemakers, the investors, the people that are going to these other parts of the world and saying, "Yeah, I think we should make sparkling wine here." Well, look at England. I mean, climate change has created, the city of Dorset now makes sparkling wine, and it's pretty good. The same with rosé. We got very few rosé here years ago, and now we're getting plenty, and we're getting from all over the world. Everybody wants to make rosé with their own terroir. So I think this protection of the committee to make sure champagne is an important feature for the consumers to understand.
Yeah.
But you said, I want to talk about Pinot Meunier just for a second, since you brought it up. For the longest time, I thought it was a white grape.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't until a few years ago that I realized this is a very dark red grape.
Yes.
And so what does that bring to a bottle of champagne as far as character?
So the Meunier is a cousin of the Pinot Noir, in fact.
Ah,
It
okay.
started with a natural mutation. You know, in life, there
Yes.
is mutation every day. And Pinot Noir is, I mean, Pinot Meunier, we call it Meunier today.
Meunier.
It's a mutation of the Pinot Noir, and we kept it. And so it's very close to Pinot Noir. The bunch is a bit smaller, very, like the berries are very tight, and indeed it's a black grapes. And I mean, I know very well Meunier because I grew up in Champagne, as I told you,
Yeah.
and I grew up in Vallée de l'Arde in a very small village called Chaumusy. Only 300 people living there, but it's surrounded by Meunier. The vineyard is a vineyard of Champagne, of course, but 95% of the grapes are Meunier. So I
Really?
personally love Meunier, and I think it's very important in the balance of our Cuvée Brut, for example, where we have a blend of 50 Pinot, 30 Meunier, and 20 Chardonnay. To make it simple, I like to say that the Pinot Noir will bring the structure, the body, kind of the bones of the blend. Then the Chardonnay will bring the freshness, the acidity, the citrus aroma. And then the Meunier will bring the gourmandise in French. So
The
the roundness.
gourmandise.
Yeah, I don't know how to translate that word, but
I'm not sure either.
the fruitiness, the roundness, so it will make kind of the link between the power and the structure of the Pinot Noir
Right.
and the lightness, the elegance, the freshness of the Chardonnay. So it's really important to have that Meunier. If you test a 100% Meunier champagne, you will get a lot of peach, nice pear aroma. So it's really fruit driven with a nice creaminess on the palate. And
That's interesting.
yeah,
Isn't it a dark skin, thick skin, dark grape, or is it a thin skin like Pinot Noir where it's very
just like
finicky?
Pinot Noir, it's
Uh,
very fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's mainly
so
in the cold terroir. And today, as we speak about global warming and
yeah.
the climate which is changing more and more, especially for the past 4 years, Meunier was very interesting because in those cold climates
Mhm.
and terroir, the balance of the wine were incredible with a lot of freshness. And today, Meunier also brings freshness into the blend. And as we said before, it's something we are looking for, and that's very important for Champagne.
You know, it's interesting because sometimes, what's the classic blend? 60% Pinot, 40% Chardonnay, and vice versa. If you're Tétanger or if you're Boulanger, there's this. They switch it. But um, one thing, when you said this about the Pinot Meunier and what it adds to the wine, it struck me that the transition sometimes when you have a blend like that, or even if it's just a still wine, you sense the transition. Like it doesn't seem to come together very well. And I clearly didn't sense that in your wines. And is that a champagne? Is that exclusive to champagne in that because it's bubbly and because there's two fermentations and because of all the things that make champagne that the grapes aren't separated, or is it the winemaker is saying, okay, this is the balance I want to make sure that we have a seamless wine?
Yeah, that's the winemaker call, I think, and that's linked with the style of the house. What we are looking for Piper is the balance on the nose, balance on the palate. So the combination of these three grapes are very important for me for the Brut because I want the nice fruitiness, but I want fresh, vibrant fruit, and I want also the minerality, the toastiness, and the elegance. So I need the three grapes to balance it. And same thing on the palate, as I said. For me, the combination of the three of them is just the perfect way to make a nice non-vintage champagne. In our case, the Brut. Yeah.
Very interesting. Is that why you're winemaker of the year at the International Wine Competition in 2021?
Yeah, I don't know if it's because of that. It's also because, and thanks to my team, because and the team is big. Huh? The
Yeah.
team is starting the vineyard. We have our own vineyard, but we also work with growers everywhere in Champagne. And as we said before, everything starts in the vineyard, in the terroir. So if I get awarded last year as the best sparkling winemaker of the year, it's thanks to their fruit also. The winemaking team at Piper, we are 7 winemakers and we work together. We have that family team spirit. And so it's my award, but it's more than anything the team award. So
Yeah, but only one guy goes up and takes the trophy, right?
yeah, that's
the way
it.
goes.
So I go grab them, but then I bring it back to my team.
So it's the IWC, which is the International Wine Competition. That's out of London, I think,
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
That's a fabulous accolade, and there's a lot of like I said, there's a lot of sparkling wine in the world, and they're not even saying champagne maker; they're saying sparkling winemaker,
Yeah.
which is covering it all. I want to go back a little bit to 1785 when Piper-Heidsieck started. That was sort of the beginning of the popularity of champagne because the bottles got better. Widow Clicquot came up with this label idea. She came up with riddling, and so all of a sudden now the world was understanding champagne. But it was also the middle of a mini ice age. It was very cool then, and it went till the early 1800s. And this is not a political show, so I'm not telling you that climate change is man-made or not. That's not part of the deal. But didn't they have to deal with the same problems you're dealing with? It's just the opposite problem.
I wasn't born in 1785, and in fact,
So I wouldn't know.
no, so I'm not sure. And we unfortunately we have some old champagne, but we don't go so far, of course. And we also lost tracks of plenty of emotion for the very first year of
Yeah.
the company. So yeah, I mean, every winemakers and every owner of the brand had to face some issue.
Yes.
I think that's life. Climate issue, like a business issue as well. So the story of Piper-Heidsieck, just like any other house, has been made of plenty of challenges, of course. But yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that the champagne we do today are even better than what we used to do
Yeah.
in the past, because I mean, we know a lot more about vines, a lot more about wine, what's going on in the vineyards, in the wine, inside the bottle. I mean, the science gave us a lot of information for the past 50 years. It's incredible
Yeah.
what we learned about wine in general. So we are very precise. Champagne and wine is a lot of fun. It's a lot of emotion as well, and it needs to be and stay like that. But on my side, on the winemaking side, it's a lot of science too. So I can guarantee you that every detail is important today, probably more than few centuries ago.
Since you brought that up, how many years forward? Let's say we obviously, and I don't know if there was any interruptions from 1785 to today in the Piper-Heidsieck ownership or in its production. In other words, it stop and then get repicked up by a family member or something. But it's you're bringing forward everybody's experience. You're picking up experience from the previous winemaker, and he picked it up or she picked it up from the previous, and on and on and on. You're talking about hundreds of years of experience that goes into this bottle. It's a rather impressive story.
Yeah.
To deal with, and I think that's an important part of champagne in
Indeed.
general. You brought up Pinot Meunier as an adapted grape, and it's a natural adaptation between whatever it was, Pinot Noir, and maybe it was Chardonnay, maybe it was something else. Cabernet is the same thing. It's a natural adaptation of Cabernet Franc and Sauvignon Blanc, I think, right?
Yeah.
So, and you study agronomy.
Yeah.
I don't know why I had trouble with that word when I
Very
read
French,
it. I'm like,
agronomy.
My father was a botanist. He was a pharmaceutical, plant-based medicine guy, and so we've been around these conversations all my life. But you studied agronomy because it's taking you to the soil.
Yes.
And so here's a question I've asked a lot of people, and I think if you look close enough around here, there's Robert Steiner's book on biodynamic farming. What's the difference between a naturally adapted hybrid? In other words, in America, there's like 40,000 hybrids of wheat because they've been crossbred to do certain things. But here's a natural adaptation. How is that different from a genetically modified grape? A grape that's like, okay, we're just going to make it in the lab be something else. Are they different?
Yeah, the difference is that the nature creates it on its
Right.
own. And then, I mean, and if we talk science purely, GMO is that you manipulate the gene.
The gene itself.
Yes, itself. So we don't do that. And even the research we do in Champagne regarding the future maybe grapes in Champagne, we are not using that. We do crossing. So crossing is that you take just like you said before, one Cabernet Franc and one Sauvignon, and you cross them. It means that you take the diethamine and you make the fecundation yourself instead of wind.
Right.
That's it.
Okay.
And you use two selected parents to make a child, kind of, to create a new variety. And that's the natural way. The human is here to help and speed that, but it's natural. So it's natural crossing. So everything's natural. We are not going into the gene to change anything. So it's just helping the nature to go faster. That's the way I think that's we should do and create new grapes for the future.
Well, I think it's very important. I think particularly even in Bordeaux now, they're testing Touriga Nacional and other types of grapes to combat or to deal with global warming. I
Yeah.
don't think Chateau Margaux will ever put Touriga Nacional in their wines, but
Mhm.
they may
In
be
200
forced
years,
to.
who knows?
Who knows?
I mean, and yeah, in 200 years, the grapes changed
Yeah,
as well.
that's true. Yeah.
We had phylloxera
Hey, Phylloxera, right?
not so
That's
long
true.
ago. So I mean,
That's a good point.
yeah. So the champagne of today and the wine of today in Europe are different than what it used to be 200 years ago, of course. And so who knows what we're gonna to grow in 200 years? I hope we still be able to grow some grapes and make wonderful champagne. And that's bring us again to the climate change and the way we need to change our way of making wine.
You just gave me a new question. Like, okay, 200 years from now, there'll be another winemaker, he or
Yeah.
she, and they're doing, and your picture's going to be on the wall.
I hope so.
What's it going to say underneath?
Emilien Boutillat.
Yeah.
My name.
That'd be a good start, but
Yeah.
it's going to say he created this, or he started this, or he produced these, or he was winemaker of the year. Well, let's put it that way. He was winemaker of the year in 2021, and now we're in 2221,
Yeah.
and they're saying, "Wow, this guy won it."
No, I don't know, but you know, as we said before, it's long history at Piper. We
Yeah.
are just here for a few years.
Passing through.
I mean, I want to spend my career at Piper because I love the brand and the team, but I'm just here for a few years.
Yeah.
And there were so many winemakers before me, and I hope there will be a lot after me. We are just the guardian of the temple, kind of the style of Piper-Heidsieck for a few years, and that's a chance, a lot of responsibility, but we need to stay very humble regarding that and the brand.
True.
We're just here for the brand. Yeah.
Somebody put it to me once, and I couldn't believe this. And never had thought about it this way, but I thought, he said, "Look, let's face it. My career is maybe it's 40 vintages.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem very much.
No.
In the expression of wine and the time of wine. And you talk about 1785. So you have to." You only get one chance a year to not fix things, but to understand things.
Yes.
And grow in that. Well, let's dig a little deeper. This is a pun intended in the soil thing, because our economy is about the soil, is it not?
Mm-hmm.
And so you mentioned you grew up in a small town, and most of the vineyard was Pinot Meunier, and you're out there playing around with your friends, probably screwing things up. Were they using herbicides and pesticides back when you were a child?
Yes, of course.
Okay, so
I mean, yeah, that like chemicals arrived in the 70s,
Mhm.
and I don't blame like the generation of my father, for
No,
example,
of course
because I mean my father was, for example, one of the last one to use horse, like to till the ground in the village,
Mhm.
and he told me like not so long ago that it was almost a shame because everybody in the village was laughing at him because it was still using horse, and
Well-
today we see the horse coming back because chemical was there, and like before that was wonderful and it was easier to deal with it.
Yeah, right.
And that was true, but we didn't know
Yeah,
the effect of that.
of course.
So now we learned. I mean, that's part of the history of champagne and part of the history of any vineyards, I think. Today we know that it's not a long-term good idea. So today, for example, at Piper-Heidsieck, our vineyards are certified with a sustainable farming since 2015, but we go forward. We don't stick on that. We want to do more. So, for example, the herbicides are no longer used in our own vineyards.
Mhm.
Either than, I mean, we don't use any more insecticide either. We still need to use pesticide to
Mhm.
treat against mildew and oidium, but we decreased a lot the
Mhm.
amount of
Mhm.
chemicals we use today regarding like 30 years ago, 20, 10, even 5 years ago. So we keep going, working on that. And it's not only about the chemicals, it's how we think globally. If we do not use any more herbicides, we till the ground, but we don't till like crazy because we want to keep the soil and the structure of the soil. So we just
Mhm.
till under the ground, and we have some grass in between. Last
Mhm.
winter we had a winter crops try to let the selected weeds kind of stay in place.
Mhm.
We also bring back biodiversity in the vineyards through that cover crop, but also through small hedges we planted all along the vineyards, more than 1,000 small trees and hedges in the last 5 years, I think. Beehives as well. So we need to think the vineyard as something global, as a system, and that's the way nature goes, and that's the way we want to think the viticulture and the vineyard management for the future.
Are you for labeling wine?
For
Ingredients?
I mean, ingredients is yeast
Yeah,
and grape
you
and
know,
sulfur.
there's in California or America, there's 76 chemicals you can add, and there's
Ah,
this movement to say, yeah, we're going to put grapes, yeast, and then anti-foaming agent or whatever they
ah.
put into it, grape sugar.
I think it's going to be confusing for the consumer because it will fry them. So we, for example, measure on every champagne we sell the amount of chemicals that we have
Yeah,
left in our bottle, and there is
that's
almost
it.
nothing
Okay,
left.
I,
Uh,
I I disagree with the idea. One winemaker put it to me: do you go back in the kitchen and ask the chef, what did you put in this food?
yeah. No, but so transparency is important. I'm not saying something else. We have here in the middle like the essential cuvée, and we have the identity card of the wine with the different grapes inside, the percentage of reserve wine, the amount of sugar.
Yeah,
So that's meaningful information.
that's important.
Yeah, but then more than that, I'm not sure it's a good idea, but it doesn't change that we work on it. I spoke about the vineyard, but that's true also on the winemaking side. We practice sustainable winemaking as well. We use sulfur, but we have very low amount of sulfur. All our champagne are lower than 50 milligram per liter of total sulfur, and we want to decrease even that amount of sulfur, and that's pretty much the only thing we use in the winery. So
Isn't there already a natural tendency for preservation because of the carbon dioxide, because of the bubbles?
not really, because I mean, before to put the wine in the bottle, it's still wine in
It's still
tanks, so
wine,
we
yeah.
still need to
Right,
protect them.
right.
But we have the chance to have a quite acidic wine,
Yes.
so we have a kind of a active sulfur, which is higher
Mm-hmm.
in champagne rather than
Mm-hmm.
in red
Mm-hmm.
wine, for
Mm-hmm.
example, because the pH is way lower and the acidity way higher. So that's a natural preservative for wine.
So we'll go back to the soil for a second. There's a lot of books written about it. The one I've read, a couple I've read, but one of them is called The Third Plate. It's from Dan Barber, the famed chef at Blue Hill Farms in New York. And he talks about the generations of pesticides, herbicides, insecticides that basically have deadened the soil, basically just flattened it out. And now through sustainability, biodiversity farming, meaning we put other things in the vineyard to help reneutralize. What's the
We
word?
neutralize the
Neutralize the vineyard. In other words, you put the grass to something. In the world of farming, wheat and other and regular grain, they'll put who knows whatever some cross crop that is rich in
nitrogen.
nitrogen
Yeah,
or rich in
that's yeah,
manganese and plant that in the interim.
yeah.
Is that kind of thing happening, or is your soil becoming more alive and more expressive because what
Yeah,
you're doing?
yeah, of course. It's amazing the difference we can see in few years.
Really?
You can see the life and the worms coming back. Indeed, we look at the balance we have in our soil. I spoke before about science. Yes, we do analysis of soil, so we know what's inside the soil and what is missing, if it's nitrogen, if it's other
Mm-hmm.
thing,
Mm-hmm.
and we can indeed choose the cover crop, the winter cover crop we want, for example,
Right.
and try to have like this kind of natural fertilization. So that's something we, again, it's all about balance and thinking globally. So when you think about each detail and the balance you see in your vineyards and your soil, life is coming back and you see the difference. And the workers, I mean the guys, the team in the vineyards, it's amazing how they
Right.
tell me that they see life coming back and they are very happy with that. I mean, it's a great pleasure for them also to see that what they did, what they changed, bring back life. And I mean, the vineyard is even more beautiful today than it used to be.
That's a thought process that always makes me go back. Imagine the Burgundian monks or the Bordeaux monks, or they didn't have any technologies, and they figured out which vineyards produced what kinds of wines, and particularly in Champagne as well. And so, and then in America anyway, we got to this point in the 40s and 50s, the 50s and 60s, where food was packaged and frozen and added and canned, and all of a sudden it was losing all its nutrition because we were just pumping the vineyards, but the farms with pesticides and killing everything. And now we're coming back. I mean, we're going back to what our ancestors actually did
Hmm?
anyway because they didn't have any choice. And like you said, you don't blame that generation because that's what was going on. But it sure is kind of cool to watch it come back
Yeah.
to a healthier sense in general.
Yes.
Um, how does that affect the like, for instance, the volume of grapes or the tonnage, the yield of grapes?
It affects it, of course, but reasonably. I think there is a time of adaptation, especially when you start using herbicide and you start to till the ground again and have some grass in between the row. The roots needs to go back deeper into the ground. So a few years you have your lower yield, but then you the vine find a new balance.
Hmm.
So you go back to something quite sustainable in terms of volume per year.
So
So
the vines adapt to what
yes.
it's tasting, and is it. Do you think then with sustainable farming, and we're going to talk about organic and biodynamic here in a second? Do you think then that the wines are more expressive because of that?
Probably, yes, I think, and that's the combination of everything: the sustainable farming we have, the care we have also for the vineyards. I am personally a lot in the vineyard. The team is more in the vineyard because you need to be there.
Yeah.
Because you need to see, and you like when you have a small rain and the weed is coming out, you need to be there and see and like cut it right away, for example. So you need to be really inside the vineyard, so you are really inside your blocks and you can feel it and see it and really you are into it, so you pay more attention. You pay more attention also for harvest dates, so all of that small details make that at the end of the day the balance of the grape is probably better and the balance of the wine is probably better as well. So it's the combination of all those details that matter, I think.
My mom was quite the green thumb. She was avid at growing whatever she felt like, to the extent she even grew bananas in San Diego. But she always spoke to her plants.
Yeah.
She went there and talked to them, and she did amazing things. And there was even a there was even a study done by the Bose Corporation, the Sound Corporation, where they put a vine in a room, and they played rock music, and they put a vine in a room and they played classical music. And I'm not verifying this, nor am I supporting or disallowing it, but uh, the vine that was listening to rock music grew away from the speaker, and the vine that was listening to classical music toward the speaker. And I don't know if it's like I'm just passing it on. Tell me about your memories in as a kid growing up in the vineyard. What are some of the more memorable things that you took away from there?
I mean, it was nice to be outside uh, when it was sunny.
Yes.
No, it was a lot of fun and being in the vineyard. I loved it. I mean, and I was with my father, so I was able to learn from him. So it's great memories. I also have bad memories when it's a full day of rain and you need to be there
Yes, right.
and to take care of the vine, or during winter time for pruning season and it's like freezing and you go back home and you cannot feel anymore your finger or your feet. That's bad memories, but I think it's part of my history. And it forged me. I don't know if it's the correct word in English, but
Yeah, no,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
for sure. It
So it's
shaped you.
yeah, it shaped me. So it's great, good, and not so good memories, but all of that is part of my like yeah my life, and that's very important. That if I'm here today, winemaker at Piper-Heidsieck, it's also because I started like young in the vineyards, really feeling all of that, and that also maybe because of that that I carry so much about vineyard and viticulture. Yeah.
I don't think in general the public across the country, America for sure, maybe Europe's a little more educated about what it is that you're trying to do and what vineyards are supposed to do. But there's a certain amount of passion that comes with your experience that you grew up in it. And I don't know that the general wine drinking public understands that it really is the vineyard. It really is the farm. And I guess in the simplest form, you can't make good wine from bad grapes, but you can make bad wine from good grapes.
Mm.
And so that's where it starts. And it's a very important part of, there's an interesting thing here in the new world part of the wine business. I mean, California's a new world, let's say. South America is the new world. You know, it's not only an expression of sort of the history of where it's at, but it's also expression of the parameters are looser and we can do whatever we want, as you saw, as we talked about. But there's also this sort of thing that people want to buy this lifestyle. You
Hmm.
were born into the lifestyle. You were, since you said age 0, you've been part of this. Even before that, who knows? You're like in terroir. Your father's experience is reflected in your youth as you learn in the conversations around the dinner table.
Yeah.
walking in the vineyard. And then there's this group that make a lot of money, putting together freeways and doing surgery, and they go, "Oh, this looks really interesting. I think I really want to do it." And I think they find out it's farming. They find out you have to really slow down your life, and you have to really understand that this is once a year, and that we are, stewards of the land, not this gourmet lifestyle.
Hmm.
Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard work as well.
It's
You need
hard
to be
work.
passionate.
Yes.
I am. I'm lucky. Every morning I wake up. I'm very happy to go to at the winery or in the vineyards. But so you need to be passionate because it's hard work,
Yes.
especially in the vineyard,
Yeah.
as I said. So no, it's
Can
hard
I
work.
can I walk into Champagne and say, "Hey"? And I know Burgundy is very, very difficult. Bordeaux, it's a little easier just to pick up a chateau that's for sale. But can I walk into Champagne and say, "I want to buy a Champagne house"? What do you got?
Wow, a champagne house. You need a lot of money and a lot of willingness because as I said before, it's a long tradition, long history. So it's not
But
like
can you
that. It's
do
not
it?
one from
You
one
can't
day
just
to
do it.
another. Yeah, I
Is
mean,
it?
no, I don't think so.
Are there people in line, families, the contracts for the grapes that you
Also,
buy your
yeah,
grapes from?
yeah, sure.
Those are all protected.
Yeah, it's long-term
relationships.
partnership. As we
Yeah.
said, we have our own vineyard, but then we also have partnership everywhere in Champagne with growers. So yeah, long-term partnership. No, it's a big family, a big machine as well,
Yes.
connected to terroir and looking for the stars, kind of.
And passion.
Yeah.
What did we bring today? We brought I showed you a picture of my daughter. Now, this is important. This is a very important concept, and I learned it from Clovis Tétanger.
All right.
Which is Champagne is not only for celebration. It should be part of a regular regiment of your wine consumption. My home, it is. You met my son-in-law. It is now at their home. You saw my daughter's picture pouring the Piper-Heidsieck Brut in the pool.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the general disposition of Champagne, that it should be part of your regular consumption?
Yeah, I would say it's with a different way. I would say that we need to celebrate every day and every single
good, great.
occasion, because I think Piper and Champagne is still a champagne to celebrate, but I think we should celebrate more things.
Yes.
Like there's so many like emotion and good stuff that happen to us every day. So let's celebrate even more often. That's it.
I like it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna start using that.
Yeah.
That's a more.
Don't tell Clovis that my
yeah,
sentence
right.
was better than his.
Yeah. I'm gonna put them side by side on YouTube. They can
Yeah. But
we're coming on 45 minutes, and I promised you 45 minutes. But you brought the Brut.
Yeah.
That's the main brand.
Yeah,
of
the
wine?
Brut is the flagship of the house. You will find it everywhere in the world. That's really a champagne for any occasion, just like we said
Yep.
before. A lot of fruitiness, vibrancy of the fruit, a nice minerality into it, and balance also on the palate with nice freshness and also nice creaminess into it. So that's really for any type of
Which
taste.
is
Yeah.
all three were gorgeous. All three completely different in their expression, which is really important to understand and taste.
Yeah.
And then you brought the Essential.
Yeah, that's a brand new here in the US. Essentiel, I really love that cuvée. It's a longer aging than the Brut. It's a non-vintage champagne as well, with pretty much the same blend, so around 50 Pinot, 30 Meunier, 20 Chardonnay. But then we have a longer aging, 5 years for that one.
In the bottle.
In the bottle. So, and then you have also, because you have a longer aging, you have a lower dosage, so low sugar, only 6 grams per liter of sugar. So you can feel even more the minerality and the elegance. With the long aging and the small dosage, you have more complexity, more spiciness, some like dry plum, dry apricots aroma. So it's very complex on the nose, and the palate is creamy, but also very fresh and long. And the third thing about that great cuvée of Essentiel is the transparency. We are talking about sustainability before. We spoke about the vineyard, the winery. Sustainability for Piper is more than that. It also concerns the carbon footprint we have, the water footprint, the energy footprint, the people we care for, and transparency is key for that. So on that label of Essentiel, you have all the blend, the percentage of each grape, the percentage of reserve wines, the date of bottling, date of disgorgement. So, I mean, for the wine lovers, it's perfect because you get everything you need to know about the wine.
It was fabulous wine, and you triggered an old memory when I used to stock the shelves of my dad's store, and we had extra dry. And so, if you ask the question of a consumer, what's drier, extra dry or dry, and they're going to say extra dry, but it's actually sweeter.
Yeah.
And so here we have extra brut, which is drier than a brut.
Yeah, that's it.
It really means extra.
Yeah.
And then you have your vintage Brut, which is a 2014. I apparently am the first one in the country to taste it, or at least in the Los Angeles market. So very
Lucky
proud
you.
of that. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But again, an extra level of complexity and aging that create this gorgeous wine.
Yeah, vintage is not every year in Champagne.
Yeah.
We only make vintage at Piper when we have a great year. So the former one was 2012, then before that 2008, and 2014 just arrived here on the market. It's a small production. I mean, we have in the blend only 18 different wines, different terroirs, mainly Grand Cru and Premier Cru, and mainly from Montagne de Reims. So it's really like a terroir champagne, I would say, and a terroir also because it's only one vintage, 1 year, 2014. So
Gorgeous.
you have 55 Pinot Noir and 45 Chardonnay, and that's a great champagne to have today. But you can also keep it and age it.
We have so much more to talk about. I didn't even touch on the Premier Cru and Grand Cru conversation, but we're out of time. I really appreciate you spending time with us this morning, and I hope the rest of your trip is a safe one. I know you're leaving today.
This
Oh.
afternoon. That's my very last day here in California.
Thank you so much for coming in. It's been a huge pleasure having you here.
Yeah.
Avec plaisir.
Avec plaisir partagé.
Merci.
It was a pleasure to have you, to be there as well. Thank you.
Print it. Excellent.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Sorry it took a little longer.